Hey, what's going on, guys? Thanks so much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe below to get all of my new videos and hit the bell icon to make sure they hit your notifications as soon as you log into YouTube. Thanks. This is going to be a conversation about culture. This is not a woman bashing podcast. This is a Sam being honest about women podcast. I try not to do these too often, but I think that this conversation is very, very important. I've talked to a lot of people about this, younger people, older people, men, women, etc. And this culture of young white women, the culture, not young white women themselves, is what is turning them off to most men. I think the best example is the church that I go to, and I love the church that I go to. I am around a lot of young white women, and they're mostly very attractive. I have no problem saying that. However, what I've noticed with a lot of them is when you breach that outside facade, when you actually are able to, and this is not just me saying that, I've talked to a lot, I lead in the men's ministry at my church, and I have these conversations all the time with various guys in different scenarios. When you breach that facade of the material outside beauty, you realize that behind a lot of these women, specifically, and again, young, white, corporate, professional women, the future Karens that are getting bred inside of our culture, you realize that there is a lack of depth there. There's like a hollowness there. And I think particularly from a Christian lens, what I have noticed, and what a lot of my friends who are single men have noticed, is that there is a lack of spiritual maturity there as well. And for this upcoming generation of young men, myself included, but a lot of young men, this is incredibly off-putting to men, this posture towards that young white women have adopted. And is it applicable in other demographics and black women and Hispanic women? It is, but not nearly to a degree as young white women are. Again, it's a cultural issue. It is not a race issue. It's not a race issue. And so it's just, I've noticed it too much. The mask is now off if we want to see that it's off. And I think that this is a commonality that is going to have drastic ramifications for our culture if we don't start talking about it. And so, because this affects marriage, this affects family formation, this affects cultural cohesion, this affects the relationship generally between the sexes. We're seeing it diverge on political lines and religious lines and a bunch of other things. And this is going to be a major issue if we don't address this and come to some kind of a social contract and collective understanding as to why this is actually happening. And the reason why I made a reference to spiritual ugliness earlier on, and I think that was, some people might say like, oh my gosh, you're woman bashing, you're harsh. Maybe. But also, I think that I'm right. I think that I'm right. And I think the evidence says that. The stats about interracial relationships, the stats about young men not being attractive to young white women. I know Nick Fuentes got a lot of this wrong when he talked to Tucker, but he talked about this too. And I can tell you that's the way a lot of young men feel. They feel exactly like, and I won't take Nick Fuentes in this specific example. I don't think he gets out of the house much. But I'll take Nick Fuentes' followers, for example, the Groyper people. They think the exact same thing, a spiritual ugliness about many young white women today. And I think that is a widely held, I don't think I know, that is a widely held belief across demographics and across many things about overall senses of where we are at as a culture, for example. And I believe that it comes down to essentially three reasons why this is happening, why this spiritual ugliness is manifesting. And reason one is a lack of shared intention and a lack of shared vision that men and women do not have. And that marriage statistic that I said earlier on, that now for men, marriage and family is the number one priority they want to have for young men right now. They want to get married and they want to start a family. And for young women, it's in the middle or at the bottom for many of them. That's an average, by the way. So if the average is number one, a vast majority of men think it's number one, or else it'd be number two or number three. And an average of like in the middle, I think there were 13 priorities in that specific poll, means a lot of women, some women are above, but some women are way down here. And the average is in the middle, which tells you all that you need to know about where those priorities land. And, it tells you all you need to know about the priorities of these two demographics between young men, young white women. Because when you cannot even get to the same endpoint of where you want to go, like let's forget the means for a second. Let's talk about the ends. So when you are crafting the vision for your life and you're saying, I want to get to a certain point, then you can go back and get the means beforehand and see where those means are going to take you. And if your endpoints aren't the same, your means to get to those ends are going to look totally different. And one of the means of your life is the dating process. It is the relation process between the sexes. And so when the endpoint of where you want to go is so vastly different, and the priorities of what you want to do in your life are so vastly different across the sexes, a relationship, whether that's romantic or whether that's a friendship or whether that's platonic, it's not possible between two people. And God forbid you try to have intimacy with that person. Like, if you even are just striking up a conversation and you want to get to know someone deeper, and you say, hey, what are you working on? What are your goals right now? What are you trying to do in your life? And they say, well, I'm doing the complete opposite of you, and everything in my life is aimed at that complete opposite end that you want to get to. There is no possibility for a productive conversation between that person and the other person. It's why our political system is so messed up, is because we have gotten so, the visions for the trajectory, of America are so different between the left and the right and this weird middle thing that's kind of emerging right now. It's that we just, we cannot see the forest through the trees anymore. And the biggest thing that is causing this unattractiveness this perceived unattractiveness of young white women towards men of all races, by the way, is the lack of intention about where you want to go in your life. Or it's not the lack of intention. I think there is intention there. Maybe not, that might not be the best word, but it is the lack of the defined point at the end not being the same, of a shared intention and shared vision. That's what I want to say, a shared intention and shared vision. Because if men and women, which they do right now, the data proves this, go look it up. If men and women do not want to get married and have kids at the same rate, at the same priority and the intensity level of getting there, that is going to cause a massive rift. A massive rift. And it is defining a generation of young people. I'm living in it. I can tell you that is 100% true. 100% true. It is defining a generation. It is defining a movement of both young men and of young women, particularly in the dating realm, but in other realms as well. And the second reason why men are viewing young white women as unattractive and spiritually ugly is that they don't feel important in conversations with them. I pick up on this all the time with guys that I talk to. Because men and women fundamentally do not understand each other. That's a reason why relationships are so cool and why marriage is so cool. It forces you to grow. It forces you to develop that side of yourself and stretch yourself and make yourself uncomfortable to help the other person and serve the other person and everything like that. For all the women out there, here's some free game about dating and relationships, marriage, whatever you want to call it. I'm single, by the way, but I think this is a universal concept. If you want intimacy, not even sexual intimacy, but if you want to make your man, your husband, your boyfriend, your fiance feel value or feel like the man, feel important, make them feel valued and make them feel important. Empower them, lift them up, encourage them, say you got this. I believe in you. I'm going to get behind you. Lead the charge. All men want to feel that way. All men want to feel useful. All men want to feel powerful. All men want to feel capable. All men want to feel competent about where they're going in their life. And to be quite frank, the way that young white women, the way this Karen culture breeding ground makes them feel is the opposite of that. It does not make them feel valued. It does not make them feel important. In fact, it puts them subservient to women. That's how most men in this scenario feel when talking to this demographic of people. Men want to provide. Men want to contribute. But with this kind of like independent, boss babe, coddled demo of women who do not want to play that role via traditional values so that men can then build back into women in a traditional way by making them feel safe, making them feel comfortable, allowing them to be feminine, not have to be in their masculine mindset the entire time of being what a man is. I got to charge the hill, do whatever. That's not natural for women. Women should not, in my estimation, this is a Christian worldview, be in that mentality all the time. They should be feminine most of the time, shocker, but that's the way it should be. Men should be masculine, women should be feminine. Cancel me all you want. I don't care. I don't even know if that still happens anymore, but whatever. So when women get out of that role of serving men in this way, in a relationship or in a dating environment or in a marriage, when they kind of just belittle them and nag them and put them down and say, like strong women, like, yeah, whatever, DEI, whatever you want to call it, gender role, gender equality, all that kind of stuff. It is making the rising generation of young men very unattracted to that demographic of women because they're not getting what they want. And a relationship is not getting what you want all the time, but there needs to be incentive to get into a relationship from both parties, from men and for women. And it's making men unattracted to that demographic of women because it's not in their cultural nature to do that as it currently sits. It's just not. And they're seeing that and they're like, listen, I don't, like, I'll date whoever, I just don't want to date that. I have, and a lot of guys that I know, they're pretty reasonable about their standards. Like, they're not going to disqualify, a woman because she has blonde hair versus brunette hair, like whatever. Like, that's not a thing. But it's just on the fundamental things of making a man feel like a man in a certain scenario. Young white women do not do that from what I've seen and what I've experienced and what I've talked to other men about. They just don't do that for the most part. Generalizations here, but that's the most part of what I have seen, what we have seen, etc. Which leads to the third reason why young men are finding young white women unattractive is a lack of shared values. There's a bunch of data on this now, especially we're over almost a year, 13 months past the election at this point. But the rising, overwhelming evidence, rising tide of conservative young men versus liberal young women. And what I think is really coming out of this, I think we're starting to experience this now, is that it's turning dating into a hyper-competitive, like, boxing match that obviously leads to massive levels of unhealthiness because anytime any relationship is a competition, it ceases to be a relationship. You're not relating anymore. Newsflash, that's what the word means. A relationship is about relating to another person. And when you're in competition with that person, that is not a relationship. It's not. You cannot form a home and a family unit with someone whose values diametrically oppose yours. You can't. And all this talk about like, well, interfaith relationships, interpolitical relationships, bad idea. Bad idea. You are inviting controversy into your marriage. Now, if you want to disagree about the marginal tax rate, if you have varying different views on like predestination or like whatever it's going to be, like that's fine. But if you are a Christian and you go on a date with a Muslim girl, or you are a Muslim man and you go on a date with a Christian girl, you should not marry that person. Mark Driscoll says this all the time. You'll probably make that other person a worse Muslim and the other person a worse Christian if you do that. You're not serving that person in that way. And the same is true with politics. And I'm fine with disagreements on the margins, but it is a values question. It is not about making you happy. It's not about the other person being happy. It is a values question because values lead to happiness. Happiness does not necessarily lead to values. 1 + 1 doesn't always equal 2 in that scenario. It all depends on what the math is. So for young men, they're going elsewhere for getting those needs met, those shared values met. And it's really going in two ways. The nihilistic way are, porn and video games. So they soup themselves up to AI porn, they pay for subscriptions, they go on OnlyFans and blow all their money or whatever it's going to be. And then video games, they go and they live some kind of adventure in some kind of virtual reality world or whatever games people play nowadays. Well, the other way, the emerging category of young men, the other way that they are dealing with this is they're going to other demographics of women, which is wonderful, by the way. I'm not against interracial marriage at all. I would say a majority of my friends are in interracial marriages or in interracial relationships, a majority of them. And it's working, by the way. Most of them are very happy, and I'm very happy for them. But young white women are getting left out in the cold And it's not a race thing. It's not anything else thing. It is a cultural thing that young men are noticing. And to be honest, good for them for acting on it. Good for them for acting on it, because this Karen culture that is setting down into young white women it's not good for anybody. And it's not good for them. It's not good for men. And I'm glad that men are acting on it and getting what they need out of women. And it's not a transactional relationship, obviously, but it needs to be something there for them. And I'm finally glad that men are sticking up for themselves and actually getting that for themselves.